As Iran's nuclear threat continues to grow, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says Washington is allowing Israel to take whatever action is necessary against that threat. Now, to chat about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, joins us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, what kind of action could Israel possibly take against Iran's nuclear threat?
Look, this statement from Sullivan, it's interesting because obviously Israel has been keeping an eye on Iran, the threat, obviously how far they've gone in their weapons program. They can't afford not to. And that's really what's really interesting about this. Like Jake Sullivan saying the sky is blue. Obviously, Iran's neighbors, they obviously know about the regime for 44 years. They know what they're capable of, and they're listening to their threats. So if there is an existential threat, which there is on the table, Israel spends 24/7 worrying about these threats, whether it's Iran supporting Hamas, whether it's Iran's regime supporting Palestinian Islamic Jihad, whether it's Iran's regime supporting Hezbollah. So they live with this threat of war every single day, which is supported by Iran's regime. And now, with Jake Sullivan saying they would have to go at it themselves and they would have permission, quote unquote, to do so. Basically, it's Washington coming out in front and saying, we're aware of, Israel kind of keeping an eye on Iran's regime and this threat. This is particularly important because Washington has come almost from behind in a lot of these different foreign policy surprises that we've had in the last 2 years, the last of which being Iran's regime getting back together with Saudi Arabia and China brokering that deal. They caught them by surprise, right, of course. And we have, a lot of different stains, so to speak, on their foreign policy record. So at this point, it's Washington coming out in front and saying, if Israel should have to go at it alone, if they should have to defend themselves, which, by the way, they have been doing because we have had very targeted attacks on weapons depots in Syria and in, again, very targeted places within their weapons program. They've been doing it already. So this is basically Washington coming out in front and saying, if Israel has to do something, we understand that they have to do something.
Lisa, anti-Semitism appears to be on the rise yet again, but this time at a Dutch soccer game. Police arrested 154 fans attending a match for chanting anti-Semitic chants.
Yeah, this is just a global obsession at this point, and really we wonder where it's coming from. It's being, perpetrated by the media, by Hollywood, of course, social media, where these groups are able to mobilize. I mean, when they get people together, like in a soccer game, in a country where soccer is a very important sport, part of the culture, right? Why are people obsessed about Israel or Jews or anything like that? I mean, are they worried about any other culture or race or religion? It really begs the question as to why Jew hatred has become such a global trend, how to stop it. I mean, there's so many movements out there trying to raise awareness about this, but I'll bring your attention to some main core parts of society that are spreading this more and really fanning the flames. And that's the university system, pop culture, social media, the government. We have elected officials here in the United States, for example. I know you have them in Canada. I know they exist in the UK. We've reported about those at the Foreign Desk, whose main interest is bashing Israel, and really, for some reason, it's an obsession. And here you have it, 150 soccer fans, not worried about soccer, but for some reason, obsessed about a religion.
Yeah, the fans supporting AZ Alkmaar were on their way to watch their team take on the Jewish Associated Club Ajax in Amsterdam when a lot of the chants broke out. Lisa, it appears as though Taiwan may be even more vulnerable to a Chinese invasion as word comes that the United States is not giving vital weapons to help support Taiwan's national defense. Weapons that may have gone, to support the war in Ukraine?
Right. And that's exactly the fear. A lot of reports are coming out saying that the United States overexerted themselves in helping Ukraine, and they continue to do so, right? Anything that we can do to help Ukraine, we continue to do so. Zelensky asking for more and more, and the United States definitely obliging, and not only obliging, pressuring our allies like South Korea and Israel to give more as well. Wanting to put as much as we can into this war in Ukraine, but And the question becomes, if we do get overly involved in Ukraine as we have, will we have the resources to give the military equipment to Taiwan to defend itself against China? And that's really on the table. And again, if you were China, if you would want to invade Taiwan, this would be the time to do so, because you see the vulnerability and you see the inability of the West, especially the United States, to help out and provide military supply.
Are we seeing a lot of signs right now that there could be a potential invasion just around the corner?
Perhaps. Look, because of the timing of all of this, because of the provocations, we're seeing provocations from China on a daily basis. And it's been a while where we're seeing their activities in the seas. We're seeing them kind of take action against the United States, for example, for meeting with Taiwan. We're seeing a lot of escalation. Now, will that lead to an invasion? Perhaps. Perhaps they would time it before the end of the Biden administration, and we'd understand why that would be the case.
There are some reports that there may be some internal problems within the U.S. Armed Forces. Lisa, apparently there are issues arising in the U.S. Navy with ships facing some poor maintenance and bad timing with the U.S.'s presence on the high seas needed right now, being challenged by the likes of China, Russia, and Iran.
Exactly. I mean, these are the kinds of reports that you wonder, when they come out, should they actually be public? And it's because it's actually exposing the vulnerability of the U.S. Marines. In this case, the ships not being either properly maintained, not being able to run, and therefore not being dispatched out to various situations and scenarios. So there are examples in the last year or two where ships were not ready to go out and therefore they didn't. So imagine that U.S. presence would be absent from an equation that would need our attention. And again, it's very worrisome. And the U.S. Marines are speaking out, the Navy is speaking out and saying, look, you got to help us help you. And this is not the case right now. We have it's a blind spot. It's a vulnerability. And maybe these reports would help them really pick up the pace and keep these ships in tip-top shape, that they could be dispatched out to areas that need our help and attention.
Lisa, a report out of Washington says the Biden administration's bungling of the withdrawal from Afghanistan decimated the U.S. military's capability to really gather key intelligence and information on terrorist activities. A U.S. intelligence official confirmed the details to Congress last week.
It's an interesting and again, very obvious observation to say when we don't have a presence somewhere, we don't have eyes and ears on the ground, we're not able to gather intel. Now, that's the case that many people make to say that we need to have some sort of foothold, some sort of presence in the Middle East. Now, are we going to have forever wars? That's the other side of the argument, right? So now, we talk about Afghanistan, obviously the withdrawal there left them vulnerable and our assets as well vulnerable, and the withdrawal was horrific. But both sides of the political aisle agreed that we would want to withdraw from Afghanistan. Now, had we done so in a more organized fashion, we would still have certain assets, whether they become intelligence keepers or people who stay on the ground and help them nation build. For that reason, that's a strong argument to say we could help them and they can help us. Having allies on the ground, for example, in places like Syria, Iraq, we have the Kurdish community. They've always been our eyes and ears on the ground as well. We have assets there as well. And now to withdraw from Iraq, for example, would also be detrimental to our intelligence gathering and would also increase the chance of more insurgencies and more political vacuums and vulnerabilities growing on the ground there. So those are two sides of the argument. And of course, we don't want forever wars. We don't want our sons and daughters out there forever in harm's way, but we do want to establish some sort of stability if we do send our troops there to actually have some sort of long-term benefit for the United States in terms of stability, security of the region, and of course, intelligence here at home.
The Texas Army and Air National Guard Operation Lone Star troops are preparing and making preparations to prevent the entry of illegal foreign nationals between ports of entry along the Texas-Mexico border. Are you anticipating a huge influx fairly soon?
Huge. This is because of the sunsetting of the Title 42, which was legislation passed under the Trump era that would be able to send migrants back home because of COVID. And then the Biden administration wanted to overturn that, but then happened to extend it because of the emergency at the border. realizing that we cannot absorb these numbers. Now, as a matter of fact, you have a lot of blue cities like New York City, the mayor there, Eric Adams, speaking out and saying we cannot absorb the sheer number of people being bused to our city. They're putting them up in hotels and the resources are just not enough. And now because of the sunsetting of this legislation, we have, I think the reports are now over 100,000 at the border trying to get in, knowing, and of course the coyotes helping them get in and taking advantage of the fact that this legislation is going to expire. Now, Border Patrol tells us that they cannot control the number of people coming in. And of course, Hal, look, there are many well-intentioned people coming in for a better life, for work, for many, many different good reasons. And they're also bad actors that are shuffled in there as well because they're taking advantage of the situation. And that's how it goes. We cannot vet the number of people coming in. We cannot absorb the number of people coming in. And of course, the expiring of this legislation is only going to exacerbate that situation to exponential limits. So let's see what happens in the next week or two.
Meanwhile, the American government is directing U.S. Border Patrol agents to release foreign nationals, including a number of Hondurans, into the United States with notice to appear in court in 2026. Come on, Lisa, will they?
Yeah, that's really it's funny, right? I mean, if it weren't sad, I should say it's funny because the system cannot handle or accommodate the numbers. So their court dates are set for 2, 3, 4 years from now, and of course, those individuals, again, many of them wonderful, hardworking, coming into the country for good reason. Many of them not. In the past week or two, we had a handful of crimes that were perpetrated by illegal migrants coming into the country. And again, you just cannot vet, you cannot control. A handful of them being on the FBI's most wanted list. Now imagine those who are not on the most wanted list and again, can't be vetted. So yes, the good guys are coming in, but the bad guys are also taking advantage of the situation. And again, the system just is going to collapse. It will not be able to handle, it won't be able to give them court dates or be able to give them the resources that America once was able to promise migrants coming into the country. So these are, again, the very, very serious issues that we're dealing with in terms of migration.
Another serious issue are the tent encampments. We've seen so many set up across North America, including in our cities here in southern Alberta, and a number up and down the west coast as well. Lisa, we've seen the videos, the images, the pictures. Do government officials and agencies have a plan at tackling the homeless issues in your country?
I'm in Los Angeles, where it's probably one of the most visual cities in terms of these encampments and the tents. They clean them up here in Los Angeles, in the most beautiful parts of the city. They'll set up the encampments, they'll take them down, they'll set them back up the next day. And there are various social media accounts that follow this to just document how crazy this is. Now, our new mayor, Karen Bass, has come up with ideas to put them in new hotels, also new construction. There are these beautiful new modern buildings that are going up. They want to use them for homeless housing. The issue then becomes, the mental illness. Will they want to be in these homes? How to truly get to the root of the problem? And throwing money at it is one option, but really, I don't think that that's going to really help get to the root of the problem and get these individuals off the streets. So I'm not saying I do have the solution, but I think it's much more complex than these cities know how to deal with, or else I think we would have seen some sort of improvement in the last 2 or 3 years. We've only seen really an exacerbation of it, and it's very unfortunate. It's quite sad, and it's sad for everyone. You have these encampments near schools. You have needles on the ground near parks and schools. These are beautiful suburbs where children just want to have an innocent childhood and play, but they're exposed to a lot more than they'd want to be.
Political reporter and foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, thanks so much for joining us today from Los Angeles.
My pleasure.